Hello, thank you for inviting me to speak today at the Maritime SheEO conference on my career as a Harbour Master. I'm coming to you today from the east coast of Australia, and before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I come from today, the Awabakal people, and acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who now reside in this area. I extend that respect to elders, past and present, and future cultural knowledge holders. My name is Jeanine Drummond. I am Managing Director and Principal Advisor at Integral Maritime. I balance this work with non-executive positions on the board of the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, University of Tasmania's Australian Maritime College, and the Australian Mariners Welfare Society. In my last role as Harbour Master at the ports in Newcastle and Yamba here in Australia, I was the first female in the role, but more importantly, I was likely the first non-pilot Harbour Master. I'll come back to that point. I was responsible for two very different ports. One, the world's largest coal exporting port with 4,500 to 4,500 vessel movements per year, and the other a small regional port with around 100 movements per year. In this role, I was directly responsible for the maritime pilotage team, consisting of 27 marine pilots across the two ports to be moving these vessels 24 hours a day. Both ports have an exposed ocean swell regularly running across their tight entrances that keeps the pilots and tugs and harbour masters on their toes. In Newcastle, bulk carriers up to 300 metres long and 50 metres wide will load coal cargoes up to 15.5 metres draft. This makes up to 80% of the cargoes moved in the port. These vessels depart the port using an underkeel clearance program that has live weather data inputs and the ship's particulars, so as to be sure that not only the river transit but the exposed swell at the entrance provides a safe window for departure with adequate underkeel clearance of these vessels at their maximum load drafts. The remaining 20% of cargoes are a variety of import and exports, including aluminium, ammonia, concentrates, cement, fertiliser, grains, pitch, petroleum products, wheat, project cargoes, and general cargoes. The port is a narrow river port with periodical flooding as well as regular siltation that requires constant year-round maintenance dredging and frequent hydrographic surveys. As the port continues to evolve and develop new business, diversifying its activities, the Harbour Master role needs to continue to work with owners and proponents and government stakeholders to advise on port regulations and ship handling requirements for these port development plans that can cover a variety of different operations, including new container terminals or regasification LNG terminals or other types of oil tanker terminals. I had spent the past 10 years working in the port sector of maritime in Harbour Master roles or functions. This provided an opportunity to expand my experience, skills and competence I had gained as a master mariner into the varying port functions of vessel traffic services, the VTS, pilotage, hydrographic survey, dangerous goods, navigation aids and incident investigation to ensure ports are managed and operated safely and efficiently. Now, if you're anything like me, when I was new to the industry, you're probably wondering what you need to do to become a Harbour Master. While some of my career pathway has been traditional to this role, other elements are more individualised, where my skill set became somewhat diversified for a traditional seafarer. The most traditional pathway to Harbour Master in decades and centuries gone by was working your way from apprentice to master at sea, then apprentice pilot to unlimited marine pilot, and then the most experienced or longest serving marine pilot in a port would become the Harbour Master after one resigns. Over the past few decades, it has been largely realised that Harbour Masters need to have an extensive skill set, both technically and with aptitude, to be able to manage ports across a variety of delegated functions, not just ship handling or pilotage. My own pathway to Harbour Master did not include marine pilotage, not because I wouldn't have loved to have been a marine pilot, but because the opportunity never arose at the right time for me. I have always enjoyed being on or near the ocean, rivers and lakes, so it was no surprise that I would seek out a career at sea. I completed a traditional deck officer cadetship, making lifelong friends while skilling up as an officer of the watch. During my early sea time, I worked on a variety of different types of ships, including containers, bulk carriers, self-discharging bulk carriers, and oil tankers, circumnavigating the globe via both capes, voyaged to North Asia, New Zealand, Indonesia, and Malaysia, as well as being spoilt with sailing up and down the beautiful east coast of Australia, frequently visiting many of our smaller ports. I worked with TK Australia, where I moved through the ranks from third officer to master, all on oil tankers. I used my junior officer free time wisely, studying via distance education a Bachelor of Business in Maritime Management and then later postgraduate studies in Management and Leadership. I used my time as Chief Officer and Master to seek out pilotage and ship handling opportunities while in port in pursuit of pilotage exemption certificates. My final seagoing role was as Master on a new build floating production, storage and offtake facility with Woodside, seeing it from its build in the yard to commissioning and first oil off the west coast of Australia. During my time with TK, I had opportunities to complete shore-based secondments, working in purchasing, HSEQ, commercial, agency and voyage management roles in their offices in Sydney, Singapore and Vancouver, as well as having undertaken extensive dry docks and life extension projects. An opportunity arose for me to move ashore permanently as a tug master in the Port of Gladstone in Queensland, where I undertook a wide variety of harbour towage work, worked closely with the pilotage team on routine and port development activities, as well as harbour and offshore salvage. When a new towage provider was awarded the next contract for towage services in the port, I signed on as a training master who specialised in local knowledge. But this quickly morphed into supporting the startup management team across all areas of operations and compliance to be set up ready in time for their operation to start. This work strengthened my skills in managing port stakeholders, including marine pilots, harbour masters, terminals and port owners and operators, as well as internally managing the interests of tug crews and importantly providing in-depth experience in regulatory compliance activities, both in state and Commonwealth legislation. This knowledge into port operations, compliance and familiarity with regulations saw me move to Caltex as Marine Advisor in Sydney, overseeing their port and terminal compliance in each state around Australia, as well as their vessel chartering and vetting processes. With growing knowledge of port and state regulations, I moved into a role as Vessel Traffic Services Manager with Port Authority of New South Wales here in Sydney, which led to roles as Deputy Harbour Master, General Manager Operations and Harbour Master of Newcastle and Yamba. Now back to the role of Harbour Master. It's essentially responsible to the state government and local communities for safe and incident-free management of vessel movements and activities whilst in port limits. Harbour Masters must be familiar with all maritime legislation to be enforced, along with understanding their own port's unique risk profile and implementing additional Harbour Master directions to maintain a safe and efficient port operation. Harbour Masters must ensure internal teams manage their risks and operations well with adaptation of best practices. Harbour Masters need to maintain the effective relationships with all port stakeholders, including community groups, terminals, shipping agents, port owners, tugs, and other service providers. The Harbour Master role usually oversees the VTS, as well as pilotage operations, ensuring all team members have completed appropriate training and licensing to be competent to complete their role. The Harbour Master is responsible for pilot training, procedures and issuing of pilots' licence here in New South Wales. And in my previous role, also responsible for the pilot transfer activities that included pilot vessel transfer and helicopter transfer. As Harbour Master, you will likely be a dedicated incident controller for a maritime emergency in your port or other ports in the state's jurisdiction, such as for shipboard fire or marine oil spill. Your teams are resourced and prepared to be able to respond quickly to incidents minimising harm. You need to be ready to manage media inquiries and government ministerial updates. Harbour Masters are responsible for ensuring the navigational port infrastructure is fit and safe for visiting vessels. This includes the depth of water being routinely surveyed and maintained as required, as well as having effectively positioned, displayed navigation aids as leads, channel markers, and fairway buoys. The Harbour Master will ensure the VTS has a procedure or system for managing movement of vessels within port limits, as well as monitoring each movement. This includes a system for reporting each vessel's important information, such as type, size, draft, propulsion type, cargo type, quantity, hazardous risks, any defects, etc., so that every vessel can receive an appropriate clearance or additional control measures that may need to be put in place, such as daylight or additional towage. The Harbour Master deals with many unexpected requests and operations, including experiencing at sea an incident on board a vessel or a main engine failure, or sadly medical emergencies, or even vessels that have been placed under arrest by an Admiralty Marshal, and they may require immediate access to a port for repairs or evacuation of a patient. The role of the Harbour Master, especially in busy and complex ports, requires someone who can constantly reprioritise the tasks ahead of them as the day develops, while maintaining focus on medium to long-term projects and work plans. They need to be an effective communicator and leader and set the standard for others to see what is expected. They need to see a bigger picture of the whole port's operations and activities and be able to manage changing risk profiles. They need to be able to have a network of other mariners and harbour masters and industry specialists to draw information and advice from to continue to learn and evolve their port's operations. I did not set out to be a captain or harbour master. I just kept resetting the goalposts every time I achieved a new goal. I have enjoyed every role and opportunity Maritime has given me. It has offered so much more than the adventure and travel I originally sought. While there have been many challenges as I learned and grew and continue to do so, the rewards and satisfaction far outweigh. I hope that by sharing my career journey to Harbour Master, that others can see different opportunities for their own pathway and maybe set their goals a little higher or a lot higher than I did, as you can all achieve whatever you put your mind to. Your own journey will be unique. Follow your goals, expand your horizons, and say yes, even when you think, I need a little more experience. Sometimes we undersell our own capabilities, shortchanging our career potential. I wish you all the very best for your own maritime career journey, and thank you for listening to me today.